So Berto, listener Jed, I believe, wrote in and said that he really wants us to talk about the Pickle Rick episode.
Pickle Rick!
So this is, if you're not familiar, the TV show Rick and Morty, and it depicts a family therapy session. And so patron Jed is like, hey, let's talk about that. So what do you say, Berto?
Let's do it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Who are you, Berto?
My name is Humberto Castañeda. I am an iPhone X repair person.
So what's the deal with this episode? Like, is it's sort of a cultural phenomenon among Rick and Morty people, right?
Yeah, actually, it's sort of traditional Rick and Morty fans or long-term Rick and Morty fans sort of don't like it, and I think it's because of the whole "I was into Nirvana before they got famous" kind of situation. Pickle Rick got a lot of notoriety beyond the normal circle of hardcore Rick and Morty fans, and I think that annoyed a lot of them. Not me. I happen to really like the episode, but
you've been into Rick and Morty since the beginning.
No, I have not.
Oh.
I've been into them for a while. I had already heard about it. In fact, I remember seeing a picture of it when they were first coming out, and I thought the concept was brilliant. I'm like, oh, it's Doc and Marty. This is brilliant. And I remember thinking, oh, I really should look out for that. But then I didn't, and time went past. So season 2 was already out when a friend of mine, Mitch, was like, dude, we gotta watch Rick and Morty. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know. I've been meaning to watch it.
But it was like a year ago.
Yeah, it was a year and a half ago.
It was before Rick and Morty was a phenomenon.
Well, before it got this big, yes.
Yeah.
So I started watching, and then I marathoned the 2 seasons incessantly. I've probably seen them like 10 times.
I remember you talking about the app on your phone.
And I played Pocket Morty till I maxed out the game. Yeah, it was really interesting. So I certainly was into it when season 3 came out.
Interesting. Okay. So can you explain to non-Rick and Morty people what the appeal is and what the audience, because I feel like there's a lot of people going, what's all this stuff about Rick and Morty?
The thing about Rick and Morty is you may not have the high level enough of the IQ to understand the subtlety of the humor. Plus, you might need a deep understanding of astrophysics. Just kidding. I'm butchering a meme that's online.
But that's what many fans are saying.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, Rick and Morty is based on Doc and Marty from Back to the Future, and essentially,
but very loosely.
Not loosely, my friend. This is a crazy scientist with white hair who builds all sorts of contraptions.
Yeah.
And he's got this kid who looks suspiciously a lot like Marty.
Yeah, but
beyond that, with him.
But beyond that, it's pretty different,
Well, I mean,
it's very crude.
But certainly
they go on a lot of adventures.
There's a scene in Back to the Future 2 where what's the girl from Karate Kid? Elizabeth Shue.
Yeah.
She's in the middle of the two of them, and she's like waking up, and she's like, "Oh my!" Or she's awake, and she's like, "Oh my God! Did we just time travel? How are we flying?" And she's saying all these things, and Doc grabs some contraption and turns around, sprays her in the face, and she goes plonk, passes out, and Marty is like, "Doc, what did you just do?" And he's like, "It's better this way." It's like a total Rick and Morty moment. Anyways. The point is, that's what the original inspiration was. And then these guys, Dan Harmon and what's Justin Roiland, right? Justin Roiland came up with the idea, and then he does the voices, right? And then Dan Harmon, I think, wrote Community and a few other things.
So Dan Harmon came to this project already with a huge cult following.
That's right, yeah.
Because he did Community, and before that, what did he do before that?
I don't remember.
He's done a bunch of things that are in what you might consider like the nerd community. He did a podcast. He did another podcast in which they played D&D live.
He still has that, I think.
There's a documentary about him in which he comes across as this sort of struggling genius who has emotional problems and a lovable asshole, kind of a sort of Rick character.
Sure. So the premise of the show.
So before the whole show even begins, there's all these people who have, he's got a huge following of a very niche group of mainly nerds, mainly dudes, who are just champing at the bit for like the next Dan Harmon project.
Yeah, and so the premise of the show is that
and I just have to say I'm coming across like I don't like him. I think Dan Harmon's really great. I think that, but I'm a little annoyed with some of the fan talk.
I see.
Because it's one thing to like a show, which is fine. I mean, I'm a nerd about all sorts of stuff. It's another thing when there's like legitimate anger about certain things related to the show or things that happen in the show. Like there's some women who are writers for the show and have been, and have been totally targeted by this group, because somehow these women, it was associated like, oh, the show is completely dumb now, and it's because these two women, and not because these women, but because they are women.
Well, so Pickle Rick was one of those episodes, oddly enough.
Right, and then you had the whole Szechuan sauce thing happen, which I have to say is just like this weird, unfortunate kind of lack of social skill kind of situation that emerged. You know what I mean?
Let me give, because I don't know if people still know, but like let me say like really quickly, the show's about a crazy scientist who's got this grandson, and he takes this grandson on crazy adventures across all sorts of dimensions and space.
Right, and it's an entertaining show. The episodes are short.
It's animated, I should point out.
It's a cartoon. It's unconventional. It's very Adult Swimmy. It's unconventional in it's not like The Simpsons. They sort of linger on things longer. It's got kind of a dark tone at times, but it's basically just entertaining. It's fun.
Right. And even though most episodes are sort of ridiculous and feel a little bit random, they intersperse in there some real existential questions.
Yeah.
And they actually bring up some very good topics about what it means to be someone and alive and in this universe.
And because Dan Harmon is very good with that.
Yeah.
And it's a show about family relationships.
That's right.
And about how basically Rick, the grandfather, is a lovable asshole, is what they say.
And
right?
he abandoned the family for years. He was missing. He was an absentee father to his daughter.
Yeah.
And he's come back into their lives.
Right. And so there's a divorce in the family, and there's some real human kind of like Roseanne kinds of experiences where it's like gritty life.
And one of the tropes from the beginning of the show is that the daughter, Beth, always excuses everything about Rick's behavior. Rick's the grandpa, no matter how extreme. And the husband, Jerry, is always sort of like, caught in the middle, and he's trying to like mediate. And then also Jerry is seen as sort of a doof and things like this. But there's this dynamic, and all of this in season 3 comes to a head because Jerry and Beth are separated, and now Beth is sort of having to deal with Rick without being able to scapegoat Jerry. And this episode, the Pickle Rick episode.
Well, so I just want to one last thing before we get to Pickle Rick, is that, as is common with a lot of cultural lightning rods for nerds, such as myself, there's a appeal to a character like Rick because Rick is this super smart guy, and he has all this power, and he can kind of do whatever he wants, and everyone just sort of looks the other way.
Right.
And he's sort of like a Bundy. What was that show? Al Bundy character.
Yeah. But in this case, it's one of those like the ends justify the means.
Right. and he's always the show kind of centers around Rick and his genius and how he always wins the day, and how he's never stressed out because he's always like, well, and he kills like lots of people and stuff.
And they've written this line between, there's episodes where they come so close to finally justifying his behavior because, he was doing it for this good cause. But then in the same episode, they give him an out.
Right. And so there's all this commentary right now about how the writers are subtly trying to communicate to these hardcore fans, these people who are taking the Rick heroism a little too literally. That Harmon and others are trying to communicate to this group, like, look, I get that you like this character and will definitely entertain you, but in the end, you have to acknowledge that intelligence isn't the goal, and power isn't the goal. The goal is human relationships and being kind to other people. Yeah. But at the same time, they don't want to completely write Rick into a whole other scenario, right? They don't want to completely diverge the character because then no one will watch the show anymore. Right. Am I describing this accurately?
Yeah, totally. I mean, to the point where like I said, I've seen the first 2 seasons probably 10 times, because one of the things that I do is I watch it on the background as I'm doing other things. It's one of those shows for me. And so I think that a lot of the things that some of the fans are upset about in season 3 were already there, as they were being hinted at or foreshadowed from the beginning.
What are they upset about exactly?
Well, for example, that Rick is no longer like all powerful. Like in many cases, he's lost control, or he loses control, and he's not in control, I should say. Or that there's too many feminist messages in season 3.
Like what?
Like, for example, when the episode where they go on the Mad Max stuff, like the second episode, I think, is in the season.
I haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, anyways, there's a few episodes where the sister, Morty's sister, is sort of like independent and strong, and a strong woman. And so they feel like, oh no, it's like this feminist crap and stuff like that.
What?
Yeah. And they also, basically, they feel like they are now trying to be what they call social justice warriors.
So answer me this. Was the appeal to this percentage of viewers that these 2 guys, particularly Rick, was overpowering women? Was that tickling some kind of...
Not only overpowering, it was the... Beth was sort of like always clueless about what was going on, and Summer, the sister, was involved in some of the adventures, but it was really about Rick and Morty. And Rick was someone who had, treated like he had this affair with this multi-personality entity, and he was basically the alpha asshole guy. And so I think there's an alpha guy, right? And in general, the whole attitude is, look, I'm super smart. I'm a guy. Everything else, certainly including females, are not as important.
It seems interesting because when I watch the show, I don't take away any of that stuff. Right. I'm just like, yeah, Rick's an asshole, and he's probably very sad on the inside, but right. But it's just a cartoon. It's funny, but somehow like there's a group of people who have this internet sort of misogyny. Yeah. And I do blame it on the internet, by the way. Like, I don't remember seeing this brand of misogyny before the internet, There's a certain echo chamber of weird misogyny that I'm just like, man, I don't remember. Do you remember? Don't you feel like it's especially the language that they use, and the way they react to things? No?
You're probably right.
Like when Janeway, the first female captain of a Star Trek show. I don't remember anyone around me saying the things that I see in a certain small percentage of people on the internet today. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's maybe true. I don't know. All I know is that one of their complaints is that the female writers are now trying to do this like little social messages and
what's wrong with that? Like what? Like the whole thing is like nothing. What's wrong with a message that women are people too? So, as long as if the show is dumb, like if this season is not entertaining, like it's not funny or the stories aren't interesting, then fine, just say that. But to like target because it's like.
So take Pickle Rick, which we haven't talked about. But one of the reasons they hate that show or that episode is because they feel that, well, there's probably 2 main reasons. One of them is they feel like it takes away Rick's control, and it sort of It's like
God.
It's sort of like, oh, Rick's forced to admit that there may be something wrong. Oh, and the therapist is a super smart woman that outsmarts Rick.
I can't. It is astounding, the misogyny and the ridiculousness of, and I'm sure we're gonna get emails about this.
Well, and then
because I'm gonna label this. Rick and Morty fans are idiots. I'm gonna label this psychology of Pickle Rick, and we're gonna get some like randos.
Yeah,
we're gonna get some hop-ons. And
listen, Pickle Rick also got a lot of notoriety outside of people that don't usually watch the show, and that also annoyed a lot of these people.
Fine, but the thing is like, okay, so let's just describe the episode. So you got a school principal tells the family that they have to go to counseling because Morty has been desk wetting. And Summer has been huffing pottery enamel. Rick changes himself into a pickle to get out of going to family therapy. But the family goes to therapy anyway, and Rick, who's a pickle now, falls into the sewer. And he's very vulnerable.
By the way, anyone who's not familiar with the show, at this point is like, you lost me at pickle. I don't understand.
Yeah. So Rick is this, scientist, and he changes himself into a pickle because he doesn't want to go to family therapy.
And he tries to sell it as, I did it because I wanted to show that I could, and no one else could have done this.
Yeah, and it had nothing to do with family therapy.
And then they ask, like, what's this needle like dangling above you that's on a timer?
Right.
And that's nothing. Ignore that.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty funny. And so he falls into the sewer, and through this really funny set of sequences of events, he figures out a way to make himself because he can't move. He doesn't have any legs or hands, but he figures out a way to piece together different pieces of a rat.
It's one of my favorite episodes, man.
He figures out a way, and the way it sequences, like he kills a cockroach, the rat comes over to eat the cockroach, or no, he
kills the cockroach.
He gets on top of the cockroach and stimulates the brain of the cockroach
to use it as a body,
because he only has a mouth is the thing, and so he has a tongue, and then he gets over there and then he kills one of the rats, he kills more, and then he builds this suit out of parts of rats, and then he uses electricity to stimulate the muscles in such a way, and he figures out how to hook it up to his pickle brain, and then he ends up he tries to escape the sewer, but he ends up in this compound of some
it's like an embassy, like,
it's not an embassy.
So not Slovakia,
but it's some sort of like European gangster compound with all these guards.
Yeah.
He's trying to get out, but he can't, and he proceeds to kill everyone.
And it's like a Die Hard and a whole bunch of other movies combined.
So I just want to stop there and say, like, anyone who is looking for Rick to be kick-ass, I don't think you get any more kick-ass.
This is so amazing.
Like, it is the most kick-ass thing. It's the most. There's half the episode or more, probably more, is Rick disemboweling. Shooting people in the head with this laser that completely cuts their heads off.
But which was built out of spare parts and a battery.
Yeah.
Spare office supplies.
He proceeds to, and you see blood and guts. He proceeds to just dismember. He's a pickle with rat parts as a body. And he proceeds to, it's a funny episode, and it moves pretty quick. And then, he moves a plastic bottle from the trash to the recycling because he wants to shame them, all these things. And then Danny Trejo is this other character, and it's hilarious. So, and it's
was that Danny Trejo?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know.
And it's fun. It's even funnier that people would consider that to be a social justice thing, or that Rick wasn't powerful enough. It's just now I'm just like interpreting these silly things, but I think it was that Rick put himself in this powerless situation out of fear of going to therapy, which Rick wouldn't have done because he would have just left to another dimension. Well, then you wouldn't have a TV show, my friend.
Not only that, but that actually is where it completely misses the point that there is one relationship that does affect Rick deeply, and that's with his daughter. Yeah. And that when his daughter is the one starting to sort of be like, maybe we need to question this and go to, all of a sudden, Rick is confronted with something that he doesn't usually have to deal with and doesn't know how to deal with.
Right.
And so he lashes out in a super infantile way,
Yeah.
but at the same time puts himself into this like almost test of his power.
Well, he becomes very vulnerable. And so psychologically, we would say that Rick actually deep down feels very vulnerable and made himself very vulnerable in an unconscious way of trying to communicate that. Because he, like you said, he could have just walked away.
The opening episode, the first episode of season 1, he is drunk off his ass, piloting his flying saucer with Morty, and he's telling Morty that he's giving it all up and he's going to blow up everything. And then crash lands, because Morty forces him to crash land. And then he's like, I was just trying to teach you a lesson. And then Morty's like, ugh. And then, so the neutrino bomb's not real. It's like, oh, maybe, or something like that. And then the neutrino bomb starts ticking, and that's the opening credits. That scene is not a Rick in control. That scene is a Rick who is out of control.
Right. So
that's the opening of the show.
Right. So a lot of the talk is on 4chan. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I guess I haven't actually followed the. I haven't been to 4chan in years.
No, you
No, I'm
were on
serious.
4chan.
I'm serious.
More recently than years.
I checked for a second to see if it had at all, but it didn't, and it's exactly the same cesspool.
Okay.
So no, I haven't been on 4chan.
Yeah. I want to point out that Rick and Morty is a very popular show, and it's only a small sliver of internet misogynists who are talking, who I'm complaining about, and my emotional reaction to that small sliver is because I get daily emails from these people.
Yeah.
For anytime, because I'm on the internet, so anytime and for this episode, because I'm reacting, I'm gonna get more emails. I know it, and so I live with these fuckers. Do you know what I mean? Like on a daily basis, and so it's aggravating to me on a visceral level.
Yeah.
Like you probably just occasionally dip into 4chan and read a couple comments and walk away. Like you don't get like daily emails and provocations from people.
No, the part that traumatizes me on a regular basis is Facebook comments on political posts.
Yeah.
So no, I don't get emails directly addressed to me on a regular basis.
Right. Okay, so while Pickle Rick is proceeding to slice and dice all these people, meanwhile, the mother and the two kids are in family therapy with Dr. Wong, who is voiced by Susan Sarandon.
Right.
And the therapist asks Beth, the mother, why her father, Rick, isn't there. And the therapist seems to think that the mother, Beth, is in denial about the way that Rick treats the family.
And she is.
Making
completely
excuses.
in denial.
Yeah. And the mom tries to redirect the session to focus on the kids and how the kids are all screwed up.
We're here why they're doing this.
Yeah. And she's like, they're just angry because I divorced their dad, is what she's saying. But the therapist seems to think that the kids are angry because of the chaos that Rick creates.
By the way, I love that. They're just angry. They're just angry because I divorced their dad. As if that alone wouldn't be enough of a topic. You know?
So they go back and forth. They get some I statements down, and the kids seem to be really enjoying the session.
Yeah.
Then Rick finally arrives in the session, which is interesting because he could have not come to the session.
Right. And he arrives as completely battered.
as Pickle Rick. And I love this scene where he gets a bullet through part of it, and he takes a hamburger that has a dill pickle and like attaches it to him.
Remember, it's the Rambo scene, but the Jaguar is doing the human version of it.
Yeah.
And then he's doing the pickle version of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
And they're both going, ah!
Right, I mean, that's the Harmon sort of genius about mixing in these different, pop culture references and stuff. So Rick comes to the session, and he says he doesn't respect therapy. He says, when I don't need therapy because, when I don't like something about the world, I change it. And so I was reading online, and someone was saying, so he became helpless and vulnerable in his own way. And then only when faced with death and the sewer did he science the shit out of things to survive. Anyway, so the therapist then, so Rick kind of goes off. It's like, I don't like therapy and I'm bored with therapy and da-da-da-da. And then Dr. Wong, Susan Sarandon, comes back with this like epic speech.
Right. It's the Goodwill Hunting speech.
Right. And it goes by pretty quick. And so I actually had to read it again because the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, she's saying a lot of things in here.
Right.
I don't really like, and plus I'm not a huge, I haven't watched all the show. So as I was watching the episode, I was at the end, I'm like, so why is this episode so popular? And I started reading and I was like, oh, it's because these relationships have such a backstory going into this episode.
Into this.
Yeah. So the therapist, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read most of it. Rick, the only connection between your unquestionable intelligence and the sickness destroying your family is that everyone in your family, you included, use intelligence to justify sickness. You seem to alternate between viewing your own mind as an unstoppable force and as an inescapable curse. And I think it's because the only truly unapproachable concept for you is that it's your mind is that it's your mind within your control. You choose to come here. You choose to talk, to belittle my vocation, just as you chose to become a pickle. Sorry, you chose to come here. You chose to talk, to belittle my vocation, just as you chose to become a pickle. I love that. I like how she just is matter of fact. It's like, you became
words never uttered in a real session.
Yeah. You are the master of your universe, and yet you are dripping in rat blood and feces.
I love that. It's so great.
Your enormous mind literally vegetating by your own hand. I have no doubt that you would be bored senseless by therapy, the same way I'm bored when I brush my teeth or wipe my ass. Because the thing about repairing, maintaining, and cleaning is, it's not an adventure. It's just work. And the bottom line is some people are okay going to work, and some people would rather die. Each of us gets to choose. What do you think of this speech by Dr. Wong?
It's so well written because I had a similar moment here. And the reason I said Goodwill Hunting is, do you remember in Goodwill Hunting where that moment when...
it's not your fault.
What happens is in the prior scenes, every psychologist has been stumped by Will. And then you get those first interactions, and Will gets under what's his name, Robin Williams' skin, and he like nearly, he chokes him a bit, right? And then I'm thinking, I think the movie's gonna sadly jump the shark in the next bit because they're gonna have to make some little speech that finally gets Will over the hump. And it's not gonna work. It's gonna feel forced because what could you possibly say to someone like Will? But they pull it off.
Yeah.
He uses the whole love. Have you ever actually been in love? Or have you just read about it? See, you read all these books, but and then I was like transformed by that. I was like, wow, they actually managed to write a convincing conversation that this therapist could have had with that kid that you could imagine could have made a dent in that impenetrable barrier. Yeah. So in that scene, that was also written.
The bad written scene would be something like Robin Williams would be like, "You don't know shit. You know what? Like you got to wake up." You know what I mean? Or
just like using the emotion and stuff like that. And then but they found that angle. Have you been in love? Right? Not have you had sex? Have you been in love? Okay. So in this case, it was a similar thing where like, how could they possibly have a scene where Rick gets told off by a therapist? But they found the right angle. It was like, that's right. The key is that it's boring. It's brushing your teeth.
Right.
And that scares the shit out of him.
Right.
And it's like that whole speech is like, wow, that's real. Like everything else of that episode is metaphor, metaphor, metaphor. That's a real speech. Right. That could apply to real people in real situations.
Right. The message is, yeah, I get it. You don't like therapy, and you think what a worse writer would say. It would say like, your family needs you, and I think inside of you is a good person who needs family. Like there'd be some kind of like therapist-y thing like that, but instead she doesn't go there. She's just like, yeah, I get it. Of course you think therapy is boring. In the same way that if I were to brush my teeth or wipe my ass, it's just like something you do for work.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. It could have been, you think therapy is boring because you think you're so smart, but you're not as smart as you think you are.
Right.
No, instead she's like, look, you're the smartest man. And she didn't quite say it, but it's nearly that. She says, and you think therapy is boring. But here's the thing. Therapy is Therapy is all those things. It's not fun. It's a thing you have to do to maintain. And that message shut him up.
Right. Yeah,
he's never shut up.
Right. He just had that look like I heard online, like, you've never seen Rick have that face where someone got him.
Actually, there was another episode. Did you see the one with what's her name? His love interest?
No.
What's her name? I can't believe it. Anyways, there is I won't spoil it, but there's a moment in that episode that's similar where it's a rare moment for Rick of realization.
Yeah. So it's an interesting message I don't think I've ever seen before, of just like, look, therapy is not fun. It is work, and it's boring, and it can be boring, just like brushing your teeth can be boring, but the message is, it's like, you got to do it. You got to brush your teeth. You got to wipe your ass.
Yeah.
And that just because for him, he loves adventure where he might die. He likes to do that kind of stuff. And anyway. So in the end, Rick apologizes for lying. Beth gives him the antidote for the pickle transformation. Beth and Rick, as they're driving away, the kids, Summer and Morty, are like, I kind of like therapy.
I kind of like it. We're not going back.
And Beth and Rick completely ignore the kids.
Yes.
And so Beth and Rick decide to get drunk together, which is this big moment, because it's like, oh, Beth and Rick, father and daughter, are bonding, are having this wonderful moment.
Yep.
But the flip side of the coin is, now both of them are completely ignoring the kids.
Yeah, it's the wrong kind of bonding. It's like the right data, wrong conclusion.
Yeah. So what's the bottom line about the psychology of Pickle Rick, Berto?
I thought for me, it was one of my favorite episodes because, as you said, if you want to see Rick be a badass, like, it's incredible, right? He goes from being a defenseless pickle to basically taking over, right? Yeah. The action is great. I thought the humor is great, but there's this rich set of moments that have been building since season 1, and at the same time, they don't jump the shark, because they sadly still, Rick escapes through the cracks,
right?
And now takes Beth with him, and in fact, the rest of the season, Beth is essentially has been taken through the cracks and is now sinking into a hole. And so it is great. It's like a great speech. It's a great moment with the therapist.
Right.
The action is just amazing.
It's pretty dark. I mean, it's a happy ending and it's a terrible ending.
Yeah.
And it's a interesting moment, but is Rick going to actually really change? Like, doubtful,
Yeah.
And no one wants Rick to change, is the thing. And to any of you who are, the 4chan haters or something, I implore you to just enjoy the show. Just sit back, have some fun, and just try to have fun.
Who are you talking to, man?
Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining me. Please take care of yourself, because
you deserve it.